Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura and today I'm wrapping up the Read Manga 18 challenge. This was a year-long manga reading challenge that I had posed to myself and anyone else who wanted to participate. I know there were a handful of you out there who did as well. And basically what it was a list of prompts that you could try and fulfill by reading manga. There were 52 prompts plus 5 bonus challenges, and you could fulfill them by doing any sort of number of combinations of reading. You could read one book to fulfill many prompts, or you could read, one title per prompt or one volume per prompt. It was totally up to you how you wanted to participate. For myself, because I have a large collection and because I read quite a lot, I don't want to let myself kind of get lazy with the way I read. I want to read new things that are in my collection. I have things sitting on my shelf that have been sitting there for years and haven't been read. I want to read genres that I don't read very often. I want to kind of pick up some things that are maybe not my favorite, but I definitely want to have them read. There's no point in having a large collection if you're not going to read it. And that's pretty much my goal and my hope and my aspiration for my collection, is that I would be able to read everything in this room. At the moment that's not the case. A lot of it has to do with the fact that this is a shared collection. I have said before that I share this collection with my sister, so about half of it's hers and half of it's mine. I've read most of my books and some of hers, and she's read most of her books and some of mine, but neither of us have read everything, and I think for the most part we've read, I'd say together we've read probably like 98% of this room, but there are some things that need to be read, and I certainly want to read everything in here, even if it's not technically mine. So that's the plan, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up posing this challenge. So what I'm basically going to do, because I know this is going to be a long video, I have already posted the updated challenge for 2019. I will definitely leave a link down below, as well as up here. I think it's on this side, in the card symbol, and you can go and check out that video, as well as the link to the blog post where you can get the printable or the print off for the list of prompts. But I know that, just reading out those challenges took almost half an hour, so this video will also be quite long. I suggest putting me on 2x speed. I am a slow talker. That's just from where I live. So certainly you could, double speed and watch me a lot faster, and maybe get yourself a cup of coffee, because this is probably going to be a long video. I'm going to be talking about over 52 books here. I'm going to try not take too long. So let's get past this intro so we can get into talking about these books. So the first prompt is Meta Manga. This is a manga about manga, and this book I actually only just picked up about a week ago. I was trying to figure out how to fulfill the most number of prompts without having to read a whole lot more at the end of the year, so I had to rearrange. I had another title actually for this category before, which I'll talk about later. But I ended up reading Love Recipe by Kiriko Higashizato. This is a yaoi manga from June Manga. It is a 2-volume title, and I really liked this title, but at the same time I had real problems with this title. I didn't like the relationship, or I don't really like relationship stories that are built on rape. So basically the plot is that the character's raped and then it turns into romance. That is a very common scenario in yaoi manga, so beware. Because this is a story, this is a relationship between sort of an editor at a manga magazine and a male yaoi author, it is sort of a discussion, or there's a lot of discussion about what yaoi is, who should be authoring it, who should be reading it, what its purpose is and what it's supposed to do, and how you're supposed to feel about it. So it was actually, there was a lot of good conversation in it. At least I felt like there was some really good nuggets of information in it, or discussion in it, and I had a lot of fun reading it. I definitely will read it again, but the relationship itself was not for me. Number 2 is a battle manga. I ended up reading Mob Psycho 100 by One. I had a lot of fun with this title. I am debating whether it will make it into my top 2018 reads. It was actually that good. And it is sort of or at least it looks like it will appear to be a battle title. I'm still not 100% certain, but it certainly feels like an introduction to what could potentially be a battle story, so I am counting it for this category. Number 3 is a horror manga, and I picked up the new title Shibuya Goldfish by Hiromi Aoi. This is very bloody. There isn't a lot of plot, but if you like something just kind of gruesome and sort of hopeless as a situation, this is a really weird story. Number 4 is a comedy manga, so I ended up reading a favorite. This is What's Michael by Makoto Kobayashi. We ended up collecting a couple more volumes of this. You can see that they're very slim stories. This is a story basically of this cat named Michael on the cover. It is very funny. It is really silly. If you're a cat person, you should totally try to get your hands on this. It is just delightful. Number 5 is a romance manga. I read Absolute Boyfriend by Uetase. This was a reread. It's not my favorite of Uetase's. I think it sort of second to last, in my opinion. It's kind of fun, but I just have some real problems with some of the characters in the middle, or some decisions of characters in the middle. I don't have time to talk about it right now, though. Number 6 was to read a 4-koma or 4-panel comedy manga, and I've been actually sitting here flipping through this just so that I can, like, maybe find a panel that I could share with you, because it's a structure, and then I realize this isn't 4-koma at all. It's really similar, and it has a really same kind of like pacing and punchline jokes, and that is Shortcuts by Usamara Furia. This is what I was planning on using for this category. So I did actually read one other this year, which was Angel Beats, and I can't think of who the author is. These both are out of print. They're both from the pulp imprint from Viz several years ago, and they both have a very similar type of comedy. This was originally published, or I think some of these comics were originally published in Garo magazine, which is an alternative magazine, so they're quite adult for one, but they're also tend to be either very sexual or very grotesque, but at the same time really, really funny. So even though this isn't technically 4-koma, it definitely feels like it. I'm gonna count it because I did read another one, which I'm not counting, because I've already written it in. I'm lazy. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. The next prompt was to read a historical manga. I read Thermae Romae by Mari Yamazaki. This takes place in 2nd century AD in Rome, so definitely historical. It's all about Roman baths, which was kind of interesting, but it is a little bit predictable and repetitive in its storytelling, so it is a little slow to read. But I thought it was quite fun to read through. Number 8 was a martial arts manga, and this one I feel like I need to reread because I was reading it when I was so sleepy, and I think I fell asleep about 2 or 3 times in a very short title. So it definitely didn't get its deserved reading, and I have a feeling that this is based on either a legend or on historical events, or historical people, so I don't actually know. I need to reread this anyway. That's basically what I mean. This is Samurai Legend by Kan Furuyama and art by Jiro Taniguchi. The art in this is wonderful. There's some really great scenes where the character is getting pummeled with arrows, which isn't necessarily like the nicest thing, but they're beautifully drawn. So illustration is great, but I don't remember the story. Number 9 was to read a sports manga. I didn't end up reading what you would normally consider a sports manga. You know, it has a very specific type of storytelling. I just picked something that was very short because I was trying to complete these challenges, and I read this one just about a week ago. So that is Baseball Heaven by Eli Mamahara. Again, another yaoi title. This one was published by Blue. It was a story about 2 characters on the same baseball team who fall in love with each other. I didn't really feel like there was a lot of story, so for me it wasn't very memorable, and you know, it was sort of just okay. I don't really have anything to say about it. Number 10 is a foodie manga, and I ended up reading Takasugi-san's Obento. This is by Nozomi Yanahara. It is a little bit less of a foodie manga than I was sort of anticipating. It is more of a romance, a slow burn romance. Thankfully, I didn't have to read that bit, because this is a romance between a 31-year-old man and his 14-year-old cousin, who comes to stay with him because parents have died, and now he is sort of trying to be a good parent and making her lunch every day. but I'm pretty sure this is going to progress actually rather quickly into romance, and I just, this is not the dynamic that I like. I like age gap romance. This one is not going to work for me. Number 11 was a mecha series, so I read Kyoko-chan, Earth Invader Girl by Ueda Hajime, same author as Fooly Cooly. Again, another story that I'm glad we don't really have any more volumes of it. It was interesting. The art looks like Powerpuff Girls, but there's some issues that I had with some cultural representation in it that I just, yeah, I wasn't too keen on. So anyway, it was interesting to read. Number 12 is a josei manga, and I was very excited to be able to collect this year, let alone read it this year, and it was wonderful, and I really enjoyed reading it, and I can't wait to read it again. AA Prime by Moto Hagio. This is a collection of 3 or 4 science fiction short stories about an endangered sort of human-created race, and their sort of relationships with individual people. Basically that's what it's about. There's lots of really interesting ideas. The art in it is really beautiful. The stories were fantastic, and just something that was totally new for me. I really, really love this. Number 12 is an out-of-print title. Obviously I could have read just about anything I've already showed you, but I picked up Zodiac P.I. This is by Natsumi Ando. Very cute, sweet, young-aged shoujo manga, sort of a magical girl type story. Number 14 is to read a hyped manga. I ended up picking up One Punch Man by One and Yusuke Murata. I am very curious about what One's art would look like in this. He did the art for Mob Psycho 100, and I really love it. Yusuke Murata has a very deft hand. He's definitely a beautiful illustrator, but I think that I would be more interested in reading the comedy version with the comedy art rather than Yusuke Murata's art in this one. It is fun. It's definitely needs some more characters, and I think I've only made it to about volume 3, so I'm hoping that some more characters will kind of liven up this story. I think it'll be fun to read, but it'll take a little time for me to get into, personally. Number 15 is a Gekika or alternative manga. I ended up reading a Gekika work. This is The Book of Human Insects by Osamu Tezuka. I read this for the Osamu Tezuka readathon that I hosted with my sister and Shay from Shay Geeks Out, and I really, really enjoyed this. This is sort of a psychological thriller. It's about a woman who kind of is so good at everything, and being around her, she kind of takes over your position and drives the people around her mad. It's fantastic. I really had fun reading it. Number 16 is a non-fiction manga, and another title I'm really excited I was able to collect. This is Project X Cup Noodle by Tadashi Kato, and this was published by DMP. There's 3 in this series, Project X. This is basically the story of the origin of the Cup Noodle Corporation, Cup Noodle brand, the making of the soup, and it doesn't sound like something that'd be interesting, but it was so wonderful and heartwarming, and just like, they have such a wonderful result at the end. I genuinely teared up reading this. I love these Project X books. I wish there were more of them. Number 17 is a borrowed manga. I ended up reading the first volume of Frau Faust by Kori Yamazaki, same author as Ancient Magus's Bride. I had a lot of fun reading it. I did find it a little confusing because I don't know the Faust legend, Faust story, and I think I'm going to need to do a little more reading. Also, the library doesn't have volume 2 yet, so it'll be a while before I can read any further, but I hear that there is romance between the kind of monster and Faust, and I'm really excited about that. I'm totally in for that, so I'm looking forward to reading more of it. Number 18 is a Western or steampunk manga, and so I ended up reading Emerald and Other Stories by Hiroaki Samura. This is the same author as Blade of the Immortal, and I was craving Western at the time, and this totally satisfied my craving. I didn't care as much for the other stories, but Emerald, the title story, wonderful. Number 19 is a space set or science fiction story, and I finally read Queen Almeraldus by Leiji Matsumoto. I read both volumes finally. It's been on my TBR for quite a while. I'm very happy to have finally finished reading it. Super wonderful, lyrical, poetic, just really grand, beautiful, atmospheric story. I'm so glad to have it. Also beautifully published, so I'm this was great. It was a wonderful read. Number 20 is Harem or Reverse Harem, so I ended up picking up a Reverse Harem. This is Yona of the Dawn by Mizuho Kusanagi. I wasn't entirely certain this was Reverse Harem when I had started reading it. Simply G had suggested this for the category, and she was totally right. It is definitely Reverse Harem. She definitely is traveling around with a lot of beautiful boys. And it's really fun. All of the characters are delightful, and the main character is great and has, you know, a lot of strength of character, which I really love, so I'm having a lot of fun reading this. Number 21 was a slice of life or contemporary title, so I ended up picking up My Boy by Hitomi Takano. I've only read this first volume. I'm a little scared of where this goes. I really desperately don't want this to turn into a romance, because the boy is quite young. But at the moment it is just this really wonderful, heartwarming friendship between two kind of unlikely people, and it's just really, really wonderful. Number 22 is a thriller or a mystery, and I really, really liked reading this one, particularly because of how relevant it feels. This is Prophecy by Tetsuya Tsutsui. It's a short 3-volume story. The beginning starts off with the, I think more the venom of the author about people who pirate, you know, artistic material, because it doesn't really relate to the rest of the story. This anti-pirating hate that happens at the beginning. It is very violent, but it continues on into this really like great cat and mouse story. This ending is so infuriating and is so wonderful. It made me think about it quite a bit after the event, and I still am thinking about it. You know, as I look at it and, you know, I'm holding it, I'm thinking about how annoying that ending was, and it was just so great because I want to be annoyed and have to have a result that I wasn't expecting or wanting. Great. Then I read an OEL. I actually read a lot of OEL. OEL is not my favorite. So I read Blade for Barter by Jason DeAngelis, and hi, I have nothing else to say about it. So the next category was digital first or digital only release. I ended up reading a title called Blissful Land by Ichimon Izumi, I think that's his name. It'll be up on the screen. It is published by Kodansha, and it was just very sweet and gentle and quiet and had great atmosphere. It felt a lot like kind of the little brother or the little sister of my Bride Story. It had sort of a similar feel to that. It had some really nice art in it, and it was just really delightful to read, so I'm looking forward to more of that one. Number 25 was to read a manga where the title hadn't changed from Japanese to English, so it was an untranslated title. So I ended up going for Ajin Demi-Human. In Japanese, this manga is called Ajin. In English, it's called Ajin Demi-Human. Demi-Human is the literal translation of the word Ajin, so in English it's called Demi-Human Demi-Human, and in Japanese it's called Demi-Human. I'm thinking that that's close enough and it'll work for this category. So this is by Tsuina Miura and Gamon Sakurai. It's quite brutal, but it's a really interesting story, really fast-paced and just really high energy, and I'm having a lot of fun reading it, so I can't wait to keep going with this one. Number 6 was to read a manga with a character that has a disability, so I ended up reading A Silent Voice by Yoshitoki Oima. Finally read this. I could have read it for the hyped manga. I've been told to read it many times. It was okay. It wasn't my favorite thing to read. I thought it was a good story, but there were so many things in it that just could have been so much better, and I really was just wanting a little more from it. But it does satisfy the category. It is about a girl who is deaf and her relationship with her school bully, and as they grow older. So it is sort of a nice, cute story, but it just could have been so much more. Number 27 is a manga with a transforming character, so I picked Mink by Megumi Tachikawa. This is a story about a girl who transforms into a pop star, sort of a magical girl type story. It was actually surprisingly good, but I didn't have all the volumes. I can't remember if it's been dropped or if I just hadn't bought all the volumes, so what I did read is incomplete, and now I read it so early in the year I don't remember the story almost at all. But I do remember thinking it was better than I thought it was going to be. Whatever that is. Number 28 was a manga that features siblings, so I read Missile Happy by Miki Karatani. This is about two sisters who have a sister complex. They both are really into each other, but they both fall in love with two brothers. Oh, Isn't that cute? Number 29 was to read a manga that had a character with superpowers in it, so I read Mai the Psychic Girl by Kazuya Kudo and art by Ryoichi Ikegami. Art was really beautiful, but the character of Mai is just so flat. She could have just had so much more personality, but she's just so blah. She just does nothing except complain. But it's so beautifully drawn, so if you're an art person and you like looking at art, I would recommend looking at this manga, but at the moment the story itself is a little lacking. Number 30 was to read a manga with non-human characters, so I ended up reading The Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts by Yu Tomofuji. All I can say about this is that it is very, very fluffy. That makes me happy. Number 31 was to read a manga that had gods or monsters. I'm fairly convinced that this has both, both monsters and gods. That's my interpretation of this. This is story and art by Nagabe. Beautiful, gothic, folktale-esque story. Definitely should be on your reading list. Number 32 was to read a title with a female lead. And looking at actually what I filled in, I can't even believe that I read this year. Did I really? I can't believe it that I only read this year. I feel like I read this like 2 years ago. But at any rate, this is what I read. Complex Age by Yui Sakuma. Maybe I just read half of, like, the last half of this. Maybe that's how I justified it. Yeah. Anyway, it feels like a long time ago, but this is surprisingly so wonderful. And if you're in fandom, particularly if you're a woman in fandom, you absolutely 100% should be reading this manga because this is your manga. This is you. Or at least it's me. This is all the conversations that I've had with myself are in this manga, so it is so great and I loved it and it was really wonderful, particularly the ending. It's just so wonderful. So read it. Number 33 was a title with LGBT plus characters, and I picked a classic, Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon by Naoko Takeuchi. There are several LGBT plus characters, but the ones that come to mind in particular are Neptune and Uranus, and then all the sailor stars at the end, I'm assuming, maybe not. But at any rate, lots of representation, I guess, in this comic, and it's just really great comic, and I really think I like the manga better than the anime, even though the anime is probably my entry into this whole madness. Number 34 is a manga that is set outside of Japan, so I picked Fake. This is by Sanami Mato. It is a yaoi manga that is featuring two New York police officers, one of whom is half Japanese. It's really fun. I like their dynamic, and the stories actually, some of the stories, the mysteries in them are actually pretty good. It's not just about the relationship, there's actually some backbone to this manga, so I like this one. Number 35 is a manga that you've owned for over a year. I've owned this one for a long time and I don't know why I never picked it up. And that is the second volume or second arc or whatever it's called, part 2 of Magic Knight Ray Earth by Clamp. I have read the first 3 volumes, or part 1, several times. This is the first time that I've read these last 3 volumes. I think I read them early in the year, so I don't remember the story very much, but I remember thinking that this was fantastic. And I have a funny feeling I even gave it 5 stars, so this was really good, and if you can get your hands on Magic Knight Ray Earth, there's many editions, you should pick it up. Number 36 is a manga that is older than you, so I ended up picking up Slum Wolf by Tadao Tsuge. I'm not actually officially finished reading this, I'm still only about halfway through, but I currently have it on my nightstand. I will finish it probably this week, and all of the stories in this are written in the 1970s. Another good candidate for alternative manga, but it is a very hard take on life. None of these stories end well or tell none of these are uplifting stories, let's just say that, but they are wonderful. Number 37 is a manga with 2 or more characters, so I ended up picking Some Days Dreamers by Norie Yamada and Kumichi Yoshizuki. It's just a short 2-volume story about a young witch in training and the person who's her supervisor. It's quite melancholic, there's some sad, tragic events, but for the most part it just feels quite light. but it will make you cry too. I really like it personally, but I know not everybody does because I have heard some reviews since reading this, so at any rate, I thought it was good. Number 38 was a manga with a one-word title, so I ended up reading Erika Sakurazawa's Angel. Angel, of course, one-word title. This is probably one of her more famous works that's in English at least, or probably her most famous in English. It's a really good set of stories, and I really enjoyed reading them recently, and then I really enjoyed hearing her talk. So if you're actually interested in hearing an interview, I do have that video linked here on YouTube. So that was really cool to be able to see her, and it really encouraged us to read these manga, and now they were like one of my favorite things that I read this year, so really loved reading this. Number 39 is a manga with a color in the title, so I have chosen Here's Greenwood by Yukie Nasu. I've only read probably the first half of the series so far. It is really good, and I'm really enjoying it, and I like the characters, but it is very slow slice of life. Not a lot happens. It's more about like character dynamics, and that doesn't always mean I'm going to pick it up very fast. So it is a good story, just about school life in a dorm, in a boys' dorm. It's pretty good. Number 40 is a manga from an author you love. I ended up reading Itazura na Kiss by Kaoru Tada. I really love Kaoru Tada, despite the fact I don't think I've ever read anything else by her, but you can really feel her love and appreciation for the medical profession, and her story is just so incredibly sweet. So she's someone I really would like to read more from, and hopefully there will be more in English someday. But she has, of course, since passed away. Number 41 is a recommended title, and I can't remember if I asked for it on Twitter or if maybe it was on a video where I'd asked for some recommendations, and then I think, oh, maybe it was for my readathon, and then I drew the name of the title that I was going to read. So this is what I ended up picking. This is Boys Over Flowers by Yoko Kamio. I have read this fully before. I think I only read about the first 5 or 6 volumes for this particular challenge, so I would like to, of course, keep reading with it. It is a fun and nostalgic, although incredibly problematic title. But it is a lot of fun if you like crazy, angsty, kind of reverse harem, I guess, stories. It is fun. Number 42 is a genre that you avoid. One of the genres I avoid the most, you know, kind of don't want to read. Even though I generally actually like reading it when I do finally get into it, is science fiction. So I ended up reading 2 titles, which are identical, and that's Voices of a Distant Star by Makoto Shinkai and art by Mizu Sahara. You can see that I have both the Tokyo Pop and the vertical release. And the Tokyo Pop release just came into my collection like a week after I had bought this. A friend was donating her comics to me, and so it was totally fortuitous, and so I literally read them by holding them one in each hand and comparing them, and I swear not a single bubble is the same. The text is completely different, and sometimes I like this one better, sometimes I like this one better. Both of them are good translations. This is probably the better translation. I don't think you're missing out getting the new edition, but it was a really interesting experience seeing them side by side like that. Number 43 is a new to you author. Lots of people could satisfy that, but this is the first time I've read this author. This is Wake Up Sleeping Beauty by Megumi Morino, another title that I haven't finished reading the series. I only just started. I think I only read the first volume so far. I do have the full thing, and I picked this up for the Tezuka readathon because it was recommended by Shay. So I do want to keep going. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I did enjoy this first volume. I haven't gotten there yet though. Number 44 is a book of short stories. I ended up reading Clockwork Apple by Osamu Tezuka. This is a real mix of stories, and I actually particularly liked the World War II sort of alternative history or fantasy-inspired World War II story. It was quite brutal and vengeful, but I really liked it. Number 45 is a hardcover, and I ended up reading A Zoo in Winter by Jiro Taniguchi. This is a nonfiction story about him becoming a mangaka, so it is actually quite interesting. I really enjoyed it, and the art in it is beautiful, but it also really shows you why his art is the way it is, and I really like that about this. Number 46 is a 2018 release, and this started serializing in 2018. I think we already have about 5-6 volumes already on the shelf, but I've only read this first volume. This is Takane and Hana by Yuki Shiwasu. This is another sort of age gap romance. I'm always looking for the age gap romance that will work for me. I'm very particular. This one doesn't quite work, although it is quite cute and silly. It's just not quite what I'm looking for. But at any rate, I read it. I'm going to skip 47 for a second. 48 is to read a manhwa or a manhwa, a Korean or Chinese comic, so I ended up getting a manhwa, Korean comic. This is Chocolate by Shin Ji-sung and Gio, and it's basically a story about K-pop bands and a girl being bullied into becoming their #1 fan. Something like that. It's cutely drawn. It was okay. 47, 49, and 50 all have the same answer. So 47 was to read the manga, watch the anime. 49 was to catch up a series, and 50 was to read a light novel. And so the first one is read the manga, watch the anime, and I did read the manga, but I don't think I'm going to have a chance to watch the anime. I really wanted to. I did actually watch a little bit of anime this year, but not much. But it just didn't work out this year, and I don't think I have time to do that now. But I did read Genshiken Society for Study of Modern Visual Culture by Kiyoshi Moku, and this was read with the intent that I was going to watch the anime, because I've watched the first series of Genshiken, but I don't think I've fully watched the second. So I wanted to do that. The next was to catch up on a series, and so I ended up finishing reading Genshiken second season. Genshiken, sort of the first season, is one of my favorite manga of all time. Genshiken second season is sort of like a 3-star series for me. It's just okay. I do like some of the characters, but the who will end up with Madarame plot is so irritating and does not work at all, and I didn't like it. And then for a light novel, of course, I ended up reading the light novel Genshiken Return of the Otaku. Wow, that's bad writing. I can't say anything else nicer about that. That was just awful. Number 51 was to read a non-manga comic book or graphic novel. I think this was one of the first things I filled in, and it was Werewolves of Montpellier by Jason. For the most part, Jason's comics, I really like his really short ones. I don't really like his really long ones. That's what I've discovered this year. I actually read quite a lot of Jason comics this year. I don't think I put too many on Goodreads because I kind of didn't finish them or like DNF'd them, so yeah. But I did read Werewolves of Montpellier, and I did like that one, and there was some really great topsy-turvy panel work halfway through where they're kind of, I think they're drunk or sick or something, but I just thought it was really great. Yeah, but generally I like his work, or I have previously. And then last for the 52 challenges, I don't know how long this video is now, an hour, then is your favorite comic, and so this one I ended up rereading when volume 41 came out, so I have reread 1 through 41 this year by Yoshiki Nakamura Skip Beat. I just really have fun reading this one. I love the romance, and it is just like so sweet, and you just are on the edge of your seat waiting for these characters to get together, and I'm not like that with almost any other shoujo manga. I just really, really love this one. So as for the bonus challenges, these ones of course were a little bit harder to complete. The first challenge was to read 2 series by the same translator, so I ended up actually kind of being pretty lazy about this. I realized sort of at the end of this whole reading challenge that I should have been keeping track of all the translators as I read throughout the year, because it's really difficult to go back and have to look inside every single book to find out who translated things. Jen is actually currently working on adding all the translators into our database so we don't have to look them up later, which is great. But because I was lazy, I ended up picking someone who I'm a little more familiar with, who is Zach Davison. So I ended up reading Shigeru Mizuki's Hitler, which was really great, but it was kind of disturbing how human this makes Hitler feel. He still feels like a monster, but I don't like sympathizing with him at all, even a little. So this was actually a really good story, and for me, World War II stories are just a little too close to home, even though they happened so long ago now. I don't like them. this one was quite good, and the art in it is beautiful, as always. Shigeru Mizuki's art, always gorgeous. And of course, Zach Davison also is translating Leiji Matsumoto's works, so was the translator of Queen Emeraldis. This one in particular is great because of the translation, or because of the words in it. It is very lyrical. It is all about how the words move and work and are repeated. So translation of this one I think would actually be a little bit more important or more significant, and I think it is really well handled or expertly handled in this one. So at the very least, I'm picking a title that I think the translation really mattered in it, and it was good. The second one was to read a volume in Japanese, and I picked pretty much the smallest book on my shelves. This little teeny tiny one. It's called Shuna no Tabi. It's by Hayao Miyazaki, and you can tell from the art that this looks a lot like it's in sort of a Nausicaa or Castle in the Sky, Laputa type world. The art in it is just stunning. But you can tell that it is fairly limited on text, so it's not, I would say it's like the most difficult to translate. It wasn't terribly easy. There is not very much pronunciation or furigana in it, so I did have to look some stuff up, and probably like 3/4 through I ended up getting out my phone and just using the Google Translate, you know, where you hover over the text and it helps you read it. Because I got a little lazy, but it is really beautiful and kind of an interesting little story, and I really wish my language was better. This is not a challenge, reading in Japanese is not a challenge on next year's. I'm actually putting my Japanese language study on hold for temporary time. I need to get some other things sort of figured out, and I'm just stretching myself too thin. It was lovely to read this, and hopefully one day I'll be able to read it more easily. The third bonus was to read 3 or more series or titles by the same author. These, thankfully, were all single volumes, and they're all by Osamu Tezuka. So I ended up reading The Book of Human Insects, which was wonderful, Clockwork Apple, which was very good, Brave Dan, which was surprisingly thought-provoking, and Crime and Punishment, which was just okay. The fourth bonus was to read a volume of manga that was over 500 pages. I was trying to read Death Note. I'm still in the middle of reading Death Note. I'm not going to finish it this year. Hopefully that will be a project for next year. So I did have to rearrange things so that I could actually put something here without having to read another 500 page volume. So I put Stupid Love Comedy by Siu Sakurai. So this is the title that I was originally using for the meta category. It is a story about a mangaka. It is pretty fun, but it's pretty forgettable too. The last prompt was to read an award winner, and so I picked up Children of the Sea. A couple of the titles that I have read, of course, were award winners, but this is the one that I used to satisfy the category, and this is by Daisuke Igarashi. I haven't finished reading this. I think I'm on volume 3, middle of volume 3, and there's 5 in total, I think. Can't quite remember at the moment, and it's not in this room actually, so I can't look. But it did win a number of awards, as well as being nominated for the Osamu Tezuka Cultural Prize, and it won the Japan Cartoonist Awards Excellence Award for Drawing, and the Excellent Prize for Japan Media Arts Awards. So it has won a couple, and I had a feeling that it was nominated for an Eisner Award when it came out, but I can't find that, so whatever. It at least is an award winner. It's definitely worth reading. I am looking forward to getting back into it. I have other plans for next year so that I don't end up not finishing reading stories that I'm really enjoying, because that was a real problem that I had this year, was just not finishing stories because I'm trying so many other little things. So different plans for next year. So that's everything that I read for this challenge. I still have read plenty more that did not even come close to being part of this challenge, so there's lots of reading going on this year. Yes, a ton of manga. Hopefully this is an hour long. I try not to talk too much about stuff. It's very hard for me. At any rate, I do have an updated list of prompts for 2019. If you want to participate, that link will be down in the description below. Please go and check it out if you're interested. It was fun to do this, particularly in the last sort of 2 months where I've been trying to fill in those those gaps where it was a little bit harder for me to fill in, and it really did sort of help me pick a couple of the titles that I wouldn't normally have picked up, just so that I could put them into this little challenge. So at any rate, if you've read any of these titles and would like to talk about it, please put comments down below. We can chat about it there. I think that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.